As Cain pedaled down the dark trail alongside the River of Nine Dragons, he felt an intense chill run down his spine. The air around him grew thick and heavy, as if an invisible force was pressing down on his shoulders. His arms trembled, and the bicycle felt strangely harder to control, as if it were carrying something beyond its own weight. Suddenly, he noticed something odd. A trail of water appeared on the ground, following his path, as if someone were walking wet beside him. His heart raced. He tried to ignore it, convincing himself it was just his imagination. It was then, as he passed a puddle, that he saw it. In the distorted reflection caused by the rippling surface, he caught sight of a pale woman sitting on the back of his bicycle. Her long black hair dripped wet over her face, partially obscuring her expression. Blood froze in his veins. With a hesitant movement, he turned his face slightly back, and there she was. The woman was right there, her deep, empty eyes fixed on him. Before he could react, she broke into a sinister smile and murmured something inaudible. Cain tried to scream, but no sound came from his mouth. It was at that moment he realized the true nightmare was just beginning. Still in shock from the terrifying vision of the ghostly woman, Cain attempted to pedal with all his strength, but the bicycle seemed to have a mind of its own. The handlebars moved on their own, steering him directly toward the River of Nine Dragons. His fingers clung desperately to the grips, but the invisible force was stronger. The cold intensifies, and he feels icy hands touching his shoulders. The reflection on the water's surface reveals the ghostly woman sitting behind him, with a distorted smile and empty eyes. Her soaked hair spills over her pale face, and her damp clothes drip, leaving a spectral trail. Cain screams, but his voice is lost in the night. He tries to jump off the bicycle, but his feet seem glued to the pedals. The woman's sinister laughter echoes in his mind, and in a moment of pure horror, he feels something pulling him forward. The front wheel plunges into the mud at the riverbank, and he is violently thrown into the dark water. On the other side, Jack watches the scene with his heart racing. Without thinking, he runs toward the river, shouting Cain's name. He sees his friend struggling in the water, but something seems to envelop him. Pale hands emerge from the depths, gripping his ankle. Panic takes hold of Cain as the ghostly woman rises before him, now revealing a decayed face, with open wounds and eyes filled with rage. Jack leaps onto the muddy bank, trying to reach Cain, who begins to sink. His friend extends his hand, but the weight of the malevolent entity pulls Cain deeper and deeper. The river bubbles with agitation, and Jack's eyes widen as he sees the cadaverous silhouette of the woman dragging Cain into the depths. Cain, already weakened by the supernatural experience, struggles to maintain consciousness as an invisible force pulls him into the dark waters of the River of Nine Dragons. His body trembles, and his mind flickers between reality and the nightmare that surrounds him. Jack, the security guard who had previously warned him, arrives running and witnesses a terrifying scene. Cain is submerged up to his shoulders, and a female figure emerges from the shadows of the river. Her face is pale and swollen, with empty eyes that reflect deep hatred. Her skin, marked with open and decayed wounds, peels off in pieces as she draws closer. Her smile is grotesque, and a mixture of mud and blood drips from her mouth. Jack screams Kane's name, but his friend seems paralyzed. In a desperate impulse, the security guard rushes forward to pull him from the water, but when he touches Kane's shoulder, he feels a biting cold that makes his heart race. The ghostly woman lets out a guttural groan and begins to dissolve into a dense mist, but her eyes still lock onto Jack, as if marking him forever. With a final effort, Jack pulls Kane from the water and, ignoring his fear, runs to seek help. Kane's body is ice cold, his skin is gray, and his lips mumble incoherent words. When the locals arrive at the scene, they find nothing but a deep silence, and the surface of the river is so still it seems as though it was never disturbed. In the following days, Kane remains in critical condition, delirious about the woman who called him from the darkness. His body recovers, but his mind will never be the same. As for Jack, he never goes near the river at night again. And the legend of the vengeful spirit continues to haunt those who dare to challenge the darkness of the River of Nine Dragons. The incident left deep marks on Kane, who was never the same again. The story spread, intensifying the fear among the locals about the River of Nine Dragons. The question remains, was it just a legend, or proof that vengeful spirits truly exist? Meanwhile, the local population, who once viewed the river with some apprehension, now lives immersed in a palpable and growing fear. That region, once frequented by tourists and the curious, has become avoided, especially after Kane's story. The River of Nine Dragons, which was already surrounded by legends and myths, is now seen as an even more dangerous place, a site where forces beyond human understanding can manifest. People whisper about what happened, and many even avoid looking in the direction of the river when night falls. The fear spreads like wildfire, and simply mentioning the name of the river is enough to make the locals shrink away. Now, the big question hangs in the air, something that the viewers, and perhaps even you, are wondering: do you believe in vengeful spirits? Do the old stories have a kernel of truth, or are they just scary tales meant to keep the curious at bay? And more importantly, what do you do when a spirit refuses to rest? Kane's story, like so many others, challenges our understanding of what is real and what is superstition. But perhaps, deep down in our minds, we all wonder if something truly supernatural could exist. Now, as we close this narrative, we leave you with that question. What do you believe? Are you ready to face the unknown? Or will the shadow of the River of Nine Dragons remain, as always, distant from your reality, a fearful legend you prefer never to have known? Now, we want to hear your opinion. Do you believe what happened to Kane is just a legend, or have you ever had an experience that challenged logic? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts. And if you still have doubts about what lies in the depths of the River of Nine Dragons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The story isn't over. We'll be back to explore more mysteries like this one. Subscribe and share with your friends, because the truth might be scarier than you think.